everyone, so I have officially owned this car now for a month, and I want to go ahead and share with you guys my 5 likes that I've developed with this car. Basically, I bought it due to the fact that my Accord just started getting a little too tired, and she was requiring a little bit more money than I would have anticipated. So I decided to trade her in, and I got Javi. So, we're gonna go ahead and do a 5 likes of this car. My first like would have to be the seat comfort. Now, in the Accord, I mentioned that the lumbar support was kind of misplaced, and it's been a constant problem with Honda. But this car actually I have no issues with the seats. It's actually really comfortable to sit in. Lumbar support is kind of where it needs to be, and the seats are just the right amount of cushy and stiff. Whereas some cars, they do tend to overstuff the seats, and some other cars you tend to sink in too much. A perfect example of overstuffing the seats would have to be a Chevrolet Cruze, and also to my mom's Charger. And the understuffing of the seats would have to go to the Chevrolet Impala. You definitely sank in those seats. So although comfortable, I definitely would prefer a good mixture of both. And this car actually does really well with seat comfort, so I'm pretty happy about that. So moving on into number 4. Number 4 would have to go to the interior. Now, the interior is not very luxurious. When I did the 2013 Elantra, I was very naive about how luxurious interiors were getting. But this car specifically, the interior is not actually very bad. I do enjoy the fact that I have a little center screen there, and all my controls I either control from the steering wheel or from the radio. And I also do enjoy the fact that I have a shift boot in this car. And the other Elantra, I think it still had a pattern shifter, so there was no boot to actually cover the positions, and I actually think the shift boot makes the car look really nice. There are some little things on the door panels, but I'll mention those in my 5 dislikes due to the fact that obviously they're going to be a little bit of a problem. But my main thing also would have to be the gauges. Now, the gauges in this specific model are definitely, I think, better than the newer models. I do enjoy the fact that the newer models do have the analog fuel gauges and the heat gauges. But these specific gauges, the tachometer and the speedo, I think actually are better on this car than the newer model. You can disagree with me. It's, some people have their preferences, but to me specifically, I do tend to think that these gauges are a lot better. So with that being said, we're gonna go ahead and move into number 3. Number 3 would have to go to the smoothness of the ride. Now, this car definitely, to me, is a lot smoother than my Accord, although the suspension stiffness is pretty much relatively similar. Basically, I think this car just absorbs a lot of the road a little bit more than the other one did. The other one also, too, the suspension was starting to leak a little bit, so I couldn't really gauge that judgment. But I definitely have to say that this is a very smooth riding car, and it it doesn't really feel too cheap, to me at least, when it comes to the driving dynamics of the car. Now, mind you, the interior, yes, but the car itself drives really nicely, and it's very stable. So I do enjoy the fact that, Hyundai built a car that's not very clumsy, because when I drove that 2007 Accent, I definitely felt like that car was a lot clumsier than this one. So I definitely think that Hyundai kind of refined the ride, which is a good thing. So I'm pretty happy about that. The next thing on my list would have to go to the gearing of the transmission. Now, this car does not pick dead gears. It actually is very good about not gear hunting and being in too high of a gear in order to shift down. So I definitely do enjoy the fact that Hyundai built a good transmission for this car. Now, it is a little bit lazy, but I have to say that, the shifts are still really firm. So it's nice to know that, Hyundai did change the way their cars are changing gears. Obviously, now they have the 7-speed dual clutch automated transmission, but I remember in those old 4-speed automatics, oh my god, those things were ridiculous. Like, they would shift so slowly, and it would bog itself down once the torque converter locked up. And this car specifically, the torque converter does lock up depending on what gear you're in. But I have to say that it is well geared. It's not very lazy. I mean, it is lazy, but it's not very lazy, if that makes sense. And it's pretty confident about what gear it needs to be in, and very rarely would I have to actually downshift coming off a turn. This car is very good about picking the correct gears. Now, mind you, it is eager to shift up still, because these newer cars are very quick to get into overdrive, but I have to admit that Hyundai did it well. They didn't actually you know, they were considering, obviously, the power that this car has. It's going to need to be in certain gears at certain times. And I think Hyundai did really well when it came to this. The gearing on this transmission is actually really nice. Number one would have to actually go to the peppiness of the engine. Now, Hyundai definitely had some issues with these 1.8 liter engines in the early 2010 era. They started having short block problems. I think they actually fixed that. Nevertheless, my car's under warranty regardless. So, I'd have to say, though, that the peppiness of this engine is actually pretty surprising. The reason being is that the horsepower is only 145 and the pound-foot of torque is in the 130s. And to me, it just is really funny because this car is actually faster than my Honda, and my Honda had 148 horsepower and 150 pound-foot of torque. So definitely it was, you know, very interesting. Obviously, this is the 6-speed automatic, so I mean, it's not going to, you know, shift like a 4-speed like my Honda did. But definitely, I was still a little bit surprised to see that this car was faster. Also, too, Hyundais are not known to be very quick cars, and my dad's accent is actually relatively quick as well. So I do enjoy the fact that Hyundai makes peppy engines that, you know, that accelerate pretty nicely. Also, too, they're very responsive. Now, this car does have a little bit of a numb feel to it, but overall, let's say if I did need to actually, you know, downshift and accelerate, you know, this car picks the right gears, and you know, it's very responsive, to me at least. So I definitely do enjoy this car. I hope this car actually ages well. With the interior, we will see. You know, that's the main thing, is because the interior paint tends to peel. But I'll mention all of that in my 5 dislikes video when I get there. I actually think I forgot to do a 5 likes on the Honda, so I was like, whoops. But yeah, no. So I'm definitely I'm a pretty okay fan of this car. You know, this car is starting to warm up on me more and more each day. So yeah, I mean, you know, it was sad to part with the Honda, but I definitely think after a month of ownership with this car, you know, I've noticed a few things that Hyundai did that I'm really actually happy about. So with that being said, you guys, I'm gonna go ahead and go, but in the meantime, enjoy this video, and I'll catch you again. Have a good one.